What if the secret to building a thriving consulting business isn't about making one big breakthrough, but about taking small, consistent actions every single day? Today's guest posts on LinkedIn 5 days a week, schedules regular coffee chats, and has built her entire consulting practice on what she calls the compound effect, where small actions grow exponentially over time. My name is Aj Riedel. This is Thriving Through, the podcast where each week I have real conversations with seasoned, successful, self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a profitable, sustainable, and fulfilling consulting practice. In this episode, I'm talking with Raina Gandhi, founder of Rising Tide Consulting. After taking 11 years off to raise her daughters, Raina returned to work as a senior leader in higher education. But something felt off. Despite her impressive credentials and experience, she found herself struggling with the same limiting beliefs that had held her back earlier in her career. Beliefs like, I'm not good enough, or I should just be grateful for what I have. After being bullied by senior leaders, Raina decided to become the person she wished she'd had during those difficult times. Now she helps women overcome the narratives and limiting beliefs that keep them playing small in their career. But here's what makes this conversation so valuable for self-employed consultants. Raina's built her entire business through consistency and small actions. She shares her exact LinkedIn strategy, why she schedules multiple coffee chats every week, and how she overcame her own imposter syndrome to show up consistently for her business. If you've been struggling with visibility, if you feel like you have nothing to add, or if you're waiting for the perfect moment to put yourself out there, this conversation is for you. Raina's going to show you how small daily actions can transform not just your business, but how you feel about yourself and your work. Let's dive in. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, my guest is Raina Gandhi. Raina, so good to see you.
Great to see you too. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you. Raina, tell me about your path to self-employment.
Sure. To do that, I think let's start at the beginning of my career, which was a couple decades ago, but I think it all plays a part. I started in investment banking. I did that for a few years, moved into microfinance for a year, went back to banking, and then I went and got my MBA. And then when I graduated, I worked back in banking again for a year, and then took 11 years off to raise my daughters, who are now 21 and 18. And so when they were growing up, I was at home with them. And then when my older one turned 11, my younger one turned 8, I went back to work in higher education. So my background is banking, finance, consulting, higher ed, and I did some nonprofit in there as well. And one of the things that I think I realized and I experienced firsthand was that I felt more in my skin when I was in my early 20s working in New York City in investment banking than I did as a senior leader at in higher education at institutions like Johns Hopkins. So from that perspective, I thought a lot about why that might be the case, and I did a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of it had to do with a lot of the narratives that I was told when I was growing up. And so initially, again, I thought maybe, okay, this is part of being a first generation American, but in actuality, it wasn't because I realized as I started doing this work, and I'll get into that in a minute, but as I started doing this work, I was working with women who were from all different backgrounds, and we all had a lot of the same narratives told to us. And so, what I decided after getting bullied by two different women senior leaders who were not even my bosses, who had more agency in some ways over my career than I had had at those times, that I wanted to be the person that I wish that I had had to help me navigate some of those experiences. So, that is when Rising Tide Consulting was born. And so, I now help women who are stuck in their careers, who feel that they are not visible enough, that they are smart enough and capable enough, but also have those limiting beliefs, and that tends to get in our way sometimes, especially given the narratives that we're told. And I help them work through a lot of those things so that they can feel like they're thriving in their careers.
Wonderful. Tell me a little bit more about some of those common narratives.
Sure. I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
I am being passed up for promotion multiple times, and I don't understand why. I am just as capable, but I'm not getting the visibility that I need. I'm And then, so at the same time, you'll hear I'm not good enough, and then you'll also hear the other side of that, which is I am good enough. I'm just not getting the visibility that I need, right? So there's a lot of just mixed messaging. I'm trying to be assertive, and I'm being called out for being aggressive. I'm trying to lead. Being called out for being bossy. Am I too bossy? Am I? And then that sort of self self-deprecation is one thing, but that questioning of how I'm being perceived and taking how others perceive us who may not necessarily have our best interests at heart and focusing on those negative perceptions versus the ones that are probably closer to reality and closer to our truth is a lot of what I work on.
How do you, those are some deeply held beliefs,
Yeah.
not only internally, but also getting reinforced by the corporate world. How do you help women overcome that?
We usually start with understanding where what our values are, right? So a lot of that becomes misaligned somewhere along the journey. And so understanding where our values are and what some of those narratives were told that are either aligned or misaligned with those values, learning to recognize those narratives when they show up for us, and then really understanding that it probably wasn't true when we were younger. It certainly isn't true to who we are today. So you should always be grateful, right? That would be one of them. You should always be grateful for what you have. Demonstrate gratitude. Demonstrating gratitude is an incredibly important value. It's a really important to me. But the narrative, you should always be grateful, is not demonstrating gratitude. Those are two very different things. And being able to separate those two things, for example, is really important. So, from the perspective of someone who feels like she's constantly playing small because she should just be grateful for what she has, is a very different narrative from someone who is feeling empowered. And then being told that you should just be grateful for what you have versus understanding that I have the capacity to have what I want to achieve, what I where I want to thrive, what I want to build. And there's this disconnect that happens, right? So
Mhm.
understanding that that narrative is very limiting. Be grateful for what you have. And that it's not as cut and dry as you are grateful or you're not grateful. And then the other piece of it is recognizing when that starts to show up and says you're not enough or you should be doing things a certain way. You doing this constant should language, right? So understanding that piece of it, understanding that that narrative is not true to who you are, and creating a new narrative. And that's where we spend a lot of time too, because it's not just recognizing when this shows up. I think that's an incredibly important step. But then what is the actual narrative? Let's look at the facts, right? You've accomplished A, B, C, and D. That's pretty remarkable. So let's focus on all these amazing things that you've done and let's create a new narrative. And then we spend time creating a new narrative. And then from that, what we do is we make sure that it sticks, right? I always say that you can go to these conferences and you learn all these things and you go home and you don't really implement most of them, if anything at all. But in this case, the idea is when you're working with someone to recognize these things, you want to be able to change and transform and create a new self-concept at the end. And that is the goal ultimately. So that's what we try to do. That's what we achieve.
Okay. And that takes time and constant reinforcement.
Exactly. So, what are the metrics at the end of our time together? What are the metrics that we want to measure to make sure that we are maintaining these new ideas and this new self-concept and this self-actualization.
Another question about you've been in business for 2 years.
Yes.
Looking back over the 2 years, what is a challenge? Tell us a story about a challenge or an obstacle you've come up against and how you overcame it.
Sure. Let's see. As an entrepreneur, there's so many challenges, right? So to pinpoint one, I think let's take one that also demonstrates some of my own limiting beliefs. So I'm very used to leading teams where I'm advocating for others. And so I was always very comfortable advocating for others. But when it came to advocating for myself, that was a challenge. And that is a challenge for many women. So part of that self-advocacy piece was the sales piece of a business, which is very hard for some of us, for many of us, actually, right? So
Mhm.
I think putting myself out there and knowing in my heart that I could really help somebody and translating that into the language without being salesy and without being um, forceful is a pretty strong word, but without being a little pushy even, right? Was
Mhm.
very, very difficult for me. And it took me a very long time to understand that. And I think it took me a few clients to build that confidence as well. But it took me a very long time to understand that the whole purpose of my work is to empower myself also, not just support other women and activate them. I don't believe that I'm empowering women. I believe that that power is already within them. So I'm helping them activate that power. But also activating that power within myself is understanding and providing that value that we are providing a service to help others do better in life, right? So if my goal is I have two daughters who are going into male dominating industries. I'm one of three sisters. If my goal is to help women move forward, to face these obstacles and to have the resources to manage them, to deal with these challenges, then I have to be able to do that myself. And so what I did was I reframed for me and thought of it from the point of view of the value that I was adding for others, for other women, by taking them through these. Because nobody stops to tell you that you have to make the time to really do the self-reflection because we're all so busy in our jobs day to day, right? So from that perspective, it was very hard for me to help myself even get to the point where I felt like I was confident enough and forward engaging in a way enough to help these women. But when I realized that I can do this, I'm someone who went back to work after 11 years of being at home, right? Or
Mhm.
sorry, let me rephrase that. I went back to work after 11 years of raising my daughters at home and not earning an income. And if I can do that overnight, then I can certainly help others because I've done it. I've walked the walk. And so focusing on the things that I can do was really helpful versus the things that sort of brought me down and said, I'm not very good at this, or I really don't want to sound salesy. It was more the reframe of I want to help others and I know that I can. And working with me, they will be better for it.
That's a great reframe and an important distinction because so many consultants, and especially women, are uncomfortable with sales and being salesy or pushy. And the reframe is that you are providing a service and you're doing your potential clients a disservice if you don't talk to them about how you might be able to help them.
Exactly. So for example, I have clients in the tech field, and some of them are engineers, and they were not really taught in their training to manage up, manage laterally, manage down. And because of that, that has held them back in terms of being able to advocate for themselves for promotions. And so I'm trying to teach, or rather, I'm teaching them the skills to help them in the next level of their career. And they these are not necessarily skills that are natural for everyone, right?
Right.
So just like they went to school for engineering, they need to get the support and the knowledge and the skills and the experience that they need working with someone who's a safe place to build those skills.
Exactly. Yes. After 2 years, are you where you expected to be?
That's a great question. Yes and no. I know that it takes a long time to build a career and to build a business. So from that perspective, I think what I've accomplished in 2 years has been spot on. I think I'm either where I should be or maybe even a little bit ahead. That being said, I think I definitely started with a bit of a scarcity mindset, and I wish that I was able to have moved through that a little quicker. And that's the other piece of it. I think if I had had the resources to help me move through that a little bit quicker, I could have gotten there faster. That being said, everything happens in due time, and um, I'm really enjoying the journey. So it's one of those things where could I have gone a little bit faster in building my revenue stream or not feeling as much of feast and famine as a solopreneur and as a new business owner? Uh, yes, for sure. At the same time, did I need to go through all of that for all the things that I learned? Absolutely. I think I'll look back and I'll say, okay, those were 2 really challenging years for me, financially, emotionally, all the things. But I got to use all of my creative skills that I hadn't had a chance to use in a really long time. I've had an opportunity to build my brand, and I had an opportunity to use my skills to do something to help others. And so for me, it's yes, in due time, but it's also, I like to do everything quickly. So I definitely had to slow it down and be patient with myself.
Yes, patience, because it does take time.
Yeah.
So, how have you been generating clients over these 2 years? Where are you finding your clients, or how are you finding your clients?
Yeah, great question. So I am finding them either through word of mouth, really. I am pretty visible on LinkedIn and I post 5 days a week. So I have built that credibility. And I think the combination of my education and my work experience across multiple different industries, as well as my career relaunching, that combination is very unique and very different. And as a result, a lot of different people can relate. Some may be career relaunchers, some may be from the banking field, some may be looking to build their nonprofit teams and want to work with somebody who understands that space really well, right? So, and of course, higher education, I was there for many, many years. So I understand very well what that hierarchy, bureaucracy, chain of command looks like as well. So I have walked that walk and so many other walks that so many of my clients are currently walking through. So I think that helps a lot.
How I want to talk a little bit about your niche, your ideal client. Have you refined or changed your ideal client profile since starting your practice?
Definitely. Started with women at any level and am now over the last 2 years, I have gone from any professional woman to mostly women in STEM for sure, but even further down in tech. So I do have women who are lawyers who are clients. I do work with law firms. I do work with nonprofits. I work with engineers. I work with many because so much of this is word of mouth, but my focus is getting more and more on the tech field.
Got it. I think that's an important distinction is that you can work with anyone, but who you market to has to be pretty narrow to be effective.
Right.
So you have, over the 2 years, you are refining. And how did you talked about working specifically with women who feel stuck. How did you arrive at that?
I think the key for me was I wanted to be the person that I wish that I had had when I was navigating my challenges. And when I was being bullied, I wish that I had had some resources that would help me understand how to navigate these situations. I did my best with the information that I had, but if I had worked with a coach, if I had worked with somebody, if I had a mentor, if I had a sponsor, I could have, in my, I believe I could have done things a little bit differently. And exactly what that would look like, I'm not sure because every situation is different, and I understand that. At the same time, God, I forgot your question. What was your question?
How
Oops.
did you work specifically with women who feel stuck?
Right. How did I work specifically with women who feel stuck? Yes. So I think I myself was stuck, and I recognize that. I just didn't have the resources. So I help women who know that something is holding them back from thriving in their careers. And I help women who want more, but don't know quite how to get there. And so for me, stuck is a great word because it means that we're not moving in the direction in which we'd like to be moving in. And so I'm able to recognize that pretty quickly. And I think a lot of women feel that way just in their own experiences.
Yes. Since you work with women on getting paid their value, how did you navigate pricing your own services?
That's a great question. I keep saying that. That's a great question. Okay, we're gonna have to take that out a few times. That is, again, something that I had to really grapple with because I know my value. I also know women don't like to invest in themselves as much as we should be investing in ourselves. As a mother and as someone who thinks about a lot of other people, I can, okay, I'd rather spend a couple $1,000s here or a couple $1,000s there, not investing in myself. But what I have learned in the last 2 years, probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is the amount of investing that I've done in my own self has been a game changer for me. So I also recognize the importance of placing that value. And my value proposition is someone who is unique in that I've worked in many different industries. And again, I'm a career relauncher. I have a specific perspective, and I've worked in senior leadership. So I have a specific perspective that really helps drive my consulting and my coaching. And initially, coming from that scarcity mindset, I priced myself pretty low. And now I realize that I have a lot of value, and people are going to value me for that value that I have. And if I don't price myself at that, then then I'm cutting myself short. And I'm also putting out in the market that I don't have that value. So that has been a very intentional choice for me at this point, which was a struggle for me, given, I want people to be able to afford me, and I think I'm very affordable. At the same time, I know that there are going to be people who are going to invest just like I did. I invested good money in my development, and I am all the better for it. And they weren't all good options, they weren't all good choices, but I learned from each and every one. And so for me, it's really important to lead by example. And if I'm willing to invest in myself, the expectation is that others will invest in me too.
Okay. As you were talking, I was thinking that in one of the things that I teach my students is this idea of being able to focus on the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And often that gap in when for my ideal clients, the gap is often revenue. That they're making this much, they want to be making this much, and they need help bridging that gap. How do you it helps in the selling process to be able to quantify the benefit of working with you. But yours is a little touch, not, I mean, not, I'm not saying this in a negative way because it's very positive, but yours is a little softer, a little more touchy-feely. How do you communicate the benefit of investing in yourself when you can't say or maybe you can, that in 6 months or a year, you'll be making more money and you'll be able to, which will pay this for what it costs to work with me. How do you help them quantify the benefits of working with you?
Yes, so everyone that I have worked with has either gotten a promotion or that project that they wanted to be on that they weren't, that they tried for a few times but didn't get, but now have the language to advocate for themselves, have gotten that project or have gotten that raise that they've negotiated because now they have the skills that they didn't have before, right? So much of this is life skill, and so much of this is immediate, almost immediate gratification because they're coming to me because they keep getting passed up or because they're, again, stuck. So, whatever it is that they're unstuck, it's exactly what you said. We figure out where are the gaps that they need, whatever it is that they need to get to. Is it in the language? Is it in their experience where they need to show that they are doing next level work? Is it what is it that they need to demonstrate and really doing that work? And ultimately, when you demonstrate those things, you're going to get where you need to go. It's just you don't know that that's what you need to do because you're focused on your day to day and you may not have developed that skill because that's not your wheelhouse, right? But that's my wheelhouse. So from that perspective, it works out every single time in some form or another, which is
That's
wonderful, which is great. Yes.
Yes, that's a great answer to the question of why should I work with you? Because everybody who works with me gets a promotion or they get the project that they wanted to get or whatever specific goal they had. That's a pretty strong testimonial.
Yeah. And not everybody may have I want specifically this. Some come to me because they want to build their confidence. And there's no way they're going to walk away without having built that because that's exactly what we are training to do. That's exactly why we're working together. So it's really rewarding, which is I think why this is going to be my life's work.
Well, and speaking of life's work, that was the next question I was going to ask is where do you see your business in 3 to 5 years?
I would love to see my business continue to grow, and I would love to see my clients 3 to 5 years from now living their best life, thriving in their careers, and paying it forward for other women. That's what I would love to see. So my business will continue to grow because I don't think that unfortunately, this is not a problem we're going to be able to solve in the next few years for women. So, but the more women we have out there, the more I can grow my business, the more women we have out there who are more confident and able to manage their inner critic and the imposter syndrome and the limiting beliefs, the better off we'll be because they'll have the language, they'll have the resources, they'll have the knowledge, they'll have the tools to move themselves forward, and they'll be leading by example for women behind them. So I feel that my work is going to be exponential in 3 to 5 years.
Okay. What obstacles do you anticipate being in your way of getting where you want to go?
Whenever someone asks this question, I think that the immediate response in everyone's head is always going to be the technology AI piece. For
Hmm.
me, sure, can you ask ChatGPT how to manage a specific situation? Maybe, but that specific situation is going to be managed by different people based on their own personality, based on a conversation, based on all the things that are not so cut and dry and so individualistic. And so for me, I think that technology is only going to help in that it will provide additional resources. However, I think the biggest obstacle for me is going to be we don't know how the last several years, at least in the United States, the trajectory for women in many different ways has not gone in the way that it was going in before that. Some of the things that have happened have moved backwards. And so, from the perspective of this hope that we can turn things around and move them forward is really the goal here. Because if we continue to move backwards, then that is going to be a really big challenge because it is already going to take a long time for us to get back to get back on track for women. I think there's a lot of things that hold us back post-COVID, especially the cost of childcare. There's so many external factors that also need work. And until we have more women in these leadership roles in these rooms where all these decisions are being made, it's going to be very difficult for us to structurally change a lot of the barriers we face. So we will continue doing that until we have more women in these roles. And we will fall short if we can't retain our female talent. And that's, I think, going to be continue to be a problem because it's chicken and egg, right? We have to get the women in the room, but in order for us to get women in those rooms where these decisions are being made, they have to stay in the workforce. But in order for them to stay in the workforce, some of these other barriers need to fall so that we can move forward.
Right. So is that part of your bigger why is that you want to get more women in these rooms?
That is exactly right. That is exactly right because until we normalize the different approach women have to take to their careers, to their lives, to all of the things. We are fundamentally different. Men and women are fundamentally different on so many different levels, but whether it's biologically, whether it is emotionally, whether it is energy, we need all of it. And there's just a complete misrepresentation for society to thrive if women are not in those positions.
What's going through my mind is that it's a sad commentary on culture, our society, that we are still having to have this conversation and that we aren't further along than, I mean, I'm much older than you are, but it's like, didn't we resolve this in the 60s and 70s? Wasn't, that the women's movement, wasn't it all about it? But it's still an issue,
Yeah, it
you
is.
know.
And unfortunately, in some cases, we've moved backwards. So we've taken a few steps back, but we've got to keep fighting the fight for future generations and we can and we will. And it's also a generational thing, whereas this next generation they're ready to do the work as well, just like you are, I am, and the generation before you and I, right? So we're all ready to do the work. We just need to manage different challenges that we're facing as time, with some challenges are going to be around technology, some challenges are going to be around human capital, some challenges are going to be around so many different things. And the challenges might change from time to time or from generation to generation, but we have to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. And especially the not enoughness, that feeling like I am not enough is so prevalent. It's so basic in so many women. And maybe to some degree with men too. Don't want to cut them out
Of
completely,
course.
but it
Of
is so
course.
true with women. I mean, how many women even at very high levels in positions of authority are still struggling with the imposter syndrome and the feeling of I am not enough. It's still
What's interesting to me is many women don't realize that that is even something that they feel. I certainly didn't. It was several years ago. I was at a conference. It was a women's conference, and we were in a room, and the exercise was to whisper something that you think would be helpful to the other person. You didn't know who that person was, you didn't know anything about them, but just something positive in their ear. And the woman who whispered in my ear, she said, "You are enough." And I've never heard that before. I'd never heard anyone say that to me before. And I was so overwhelmed by that comment that I had to excuse myself from the room and like collect myself because I didn't realize that that was something that I had not felt, that somewhere in me, I definitely felt that I was not enough, but nobody had ever put words to that for me or against me in that sense, right? Nobody ever said to you, you are not enough. And nobody ever said to me, you are enough. But somewhere in within myself, that was sitting there. And I will never for the rest of my life forget that moment because I had no idea that I had that feeling that I was not enough until that moment, until someone said to me, you are enough.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps. I love that story. Love that
Thank you.
story.
Appreciate that.
Well, well, as we near the end of the podcast, I have a couple rapid fire wrap up questions that I like to ask.
Sure.
And the first question: what book, podcast, or other resource has been most valuable to you in your consulting and coaching career?
So I am a huge fan of Adam Grant. So anything Adam says in his podcast or in on social media or in his interviews, he teaches at my alma mater. So I have seen him speak live at school when I've gone back for reunions. And so even in his live discussions, just very, very profound yet simple ideas that really have resonated with me. And most recently, I read Likeable Badass by Alison Frigale, and that was also very helpful. Melody Wilding's, hold on, let me just, sorry, I should know what this is. Let me just check it really quick because that's another really good resource, I think. Let's see. All right, okay. I also really enjoyed reading Managing Up by Melody Wilding because that gives very tactical ways to manage specific situations. And for me, that's very important. I think I mentioned this earlier that when you go to a conference and you learn so many things, but you don't necessarily take things back with you. And that's a big, you could say, pet peeve of mine, where I feel that if someone is going to listen to me speak, they need to go back with very actionable things to do. And so, what I really like about Melody's book is that she's very actionable in terms of helping provide language around different situations.
Good. I will I will look those up and those links will be in the show notes for those of you listening. And the last and most important question: how can listeners learn more about you and your business?
Oh, great. So they can reach me on LinkedIn. I post 5 days a week, like I said, so I'm very, very active. It's Raina B. Gandhi, Rising Tide Consulting. You can look it up either way. And my website, you can get in touch with me through my website, which is www.risingtideconsultingllc.com. You can reach me via email. It's Raina, Raina, at risingtideconsultingllc.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram. That's rising.tide.consulting.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And again, all those links will be in the show notes for those of you listening. Well, Raina, it has been wonderful talking to you today. Thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate your time.
And for all of you listening, until next time, keep thriving through. I hope Raina's story resonated with you as much as it did with me. That moment when someone whispered, "You are enough," in her ear at that conference, and she realized she'd never heard those words before, that's something many of us can relate to. We're all carrying around these narratives that we don't even realize are holding us back. And maybe we've never had somebody in our life who whispered in our ear, "You are enough." Here's what I especially love about Raina's approach. She's not waiting for perfect. She's not waiting until she feels enough. She's showing up 5 days a week on LinkedIn. She's having those coffee chats. She's taking small, consistent actions that compound over time. And that's exactly how you build a consulting practice that's sustainable. If you've been telling yourself you need to have it all figured out before you start showing up, or that you don't have anything new to add to the conversation, I want you to hear this. You are enough. Your experience matters. Your perspective is valuable. And the compound effect of small, consistent actions really does work. Start with one thing. Maybe it's posting on LinkedIn once this week. Maybe it's reaching out to someone for a coffee chat. Whatever it is, take that first small action. Because as Raina showed us, building a business isn't about quick wins. It's about building relationships, providing value, and being consistent over time. Until next time, keep thriving through.